Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the ShockCast for Friday, March 23rd at around just about 5 o'clock p.m. on a Friday. The topic for today is faith and obedience in desperate times. Desperate times are at our doorstep. For some, they are already here. The question on our minds is, what do we do when danger threatens us, our family, and our neighbors? Well, I can tell you that nothing tests your faith and obedience like a desperate situation. You might think that you know how to react, but you won't know until it happens. Will you keep your faith and obey God when everything falls apart? If you don't know the answer to that, now is the time to make sure. Oh, and before I get any further, Hotmail and Outlook.com are currently blocking the shock letter. Getting them to stop doing that is difficult. It is unclear whether this is an attack by Microsoft or merely the result of malicious action by individuals. Lord willing, Hotmail and Outlook users will be able to receive the shock letter in their inbox fairly soon. Anyway, back to our story. Last week's article struck a chord with many of you, and I'm glad, since it certainly struck a chord with me, a deep one that's lasted actually several years. That tsunami in 2011 was an unimaginable and unexpected. I don't think anyone really expected any of it. Oh, everyone in Japan knew that a tsunami was possible, but until March 3rd, 2011, it was just a theoretical threat. That event encapsulates the challenge that we all have in facing the future. We know that terrible catastrophe is coming. We can almost feel it. But it's hard to imagine what it will be like, or that it will be as bad as the Bible describes. In fact, we really need to take this threat on faith and obey what our Lord told us to do in Luke 21:36. Quote, "Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man." There is a way to escape what is coming, but you are required to watch and pray that you would be worthy to escape. It's hard to get my mind around the idea of being worthy to escape, and it's an unsettling idea since I don't consider myself to be worthy. However, Luke 21:36 is not, and was not, a suggestion. It was a command. So I will do my best to pray that I am worthy to escape, and worthy to stand before Jesus when the first resurrection arrives. If you are a regular reader of these articles or a listener to the ShockCast, then you are doing your duty to watch. You can always do more, and I encourage you to do that, if you can. But you are obeying a command by Jesus, and that's the point. Believe me, the urge to disobey will come. In fact, you will probably face the urge to disobey God every day. Your actions and your words are a testament to whether you are truly obedient. And I have failed those tests far too often. So I can't tell you that I am such a wonderful person to follow. There are times when I have used foul language, driven like a maniac, spoken and acted too harshly, not been patient or loving, run when I needed to walk, or even wait. And if it seems like I am just scratching the surface of my sinfulness, you're right. There are depths to my capacity to sin that I don't care to really go into. And I shake at the thought of what I deserve. I am not worthy to escape what is coming, but I will still pray that I will be. Will preparing for catastrophe help? Absolutely. And you need to do your best to prepare. I truly believe that the commandment to watch was not limited to reading your newspaper or listening to the ShockCast. We really do need to put our perceptions into action. If we see something, we must do something. Unless you're brain dead. And if that's the case, you wouldn't be reading this in the first place. I mean, anyway. What is the first thing that you should do? Read your Bible and obey what it says, even if it doesn't make sense. Lots of people like to insert exceptions into their obedience to God. In fact, we would all love to offer our own exceptions to our need to obey God. Think of each yes but that goes through your mind when you see something in the Bible that you don't want to obey. Yes, but my country is despicable and should not be obeyed. Yes, but the speed limit is only a reference. Yes, but choosing to marry an unsaved woman or man isn't that bad. And I struggled with that last one mightily, until God sent me the woman who would be Mrs. Little. Marrying an unsaved person isn't just a sin, it's really, 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 really stupid. I praise God that He kept me from doing that. Will you obey God in these rather small things? Will you do what is right, even if it hurts? And yes, doing things right really hurts. For instance, I'm currently involved in something exceptionally painful that I would rather neglect and ignore. I saw some things, and now I have to act on what I've seen. And I would have had to accept the blowback that had already begun if God had not intervened with a resolution. It is interesting how God will sometimes resolve problems when you step forward in obedience. He won't always do that, but He will walk with you every single time that you do. How about you? Are you ready to get into the practice of obeying God so that when the difficult times come, you'll be ready? Remember that the residents of northeast Japan weren't in the habit of obeying tsunami warnings, so they weren't ready when the tsunami swept their lives away. So now let's get into some of the stuff I saw over the past week in terms of my research and my reading. By the way, you'll see the shadow to my right. And that is because the direction is west-northwest. Looking out over the Taiwan Strait. Just saying. Anyway, the first one is a dire warning from Congressman Duffy. Here's a quote. Democrat candidates might be sketchy about admitting that, especially in more 50-50 seats. But of course, they're going to impeach Donald Trump, Duffy told News Talk 1130 WISN's Dan O'Donnell on Friday. Do you think that MSNBC or CNN would allow for anything less? And by the way, there aren't that many blue dog Democrats left in Congress. They are radical leftist socialist Democrats. They are like Nancy Pelosi. They are far left people. That's who's winning their primaries. And do you think that the far left resist movement base of the Democrat Party would accept anything other than impeachment? If this impeachment effort succeeds, if this happens, then America is done. It means that the only way forward is civil war. And yes, I mean guns and firing squads, civil war. This is what the far left is pushing America into. And it's going to happen, probably under Trump. But America will suffer greatly. But it will rise as a darker version of what it once was. All pretense of, we are great because we are good, will be gone. As I have said many times, there are three prophetic possibilities for America. She is either the beast, the rider of the beast, or what I call beast rider, or she is so destroyed that she is no longer a political power of any kind on the world stage. She really cannot be, America really cannot be the beast rider, since Revelation describes the beast rider as a city. So there really are only two choices. Can you figure out which one I'm rooting for? Also, Eric Holder he's such a dirtbag. He's actually confirming what Congressman Duffy is saying above. He really wants to pull out the knives and go after impeaching Donald Trump. He wants a civil war. Then there's Peak Decadence, the West and the Fate of Empire. It's a YouTube. And this is really how empires rise and fall. Sir John Glubb observed that empires have a lifespan of about 250 years, and that they follow a predictable course, always ending in decadence. Always. Well, America is following the same predictable course with the same predictable end. The only question in my mind is about the survivors of the fall of this penultimate empire. And the one that follows, the ultimate, will capture the world in its iron fist. The next one is breaking. Tony Podesta, creepy photos leaked. YouTube. This is so bad. It's terrible. Podesta had naked pictures of young girls on the walls all over his home. All over his home. This is sick. Will Tony or his brother go to jail? Of course not. They certainly think that they'll get away with being child rapists. But these dirtbags, they need to go to jail. Let's just put it that way. They need to go to jail. And until they go to jail, I'm sorry, but we will never be able to claim that Washington, D.C. is free of corruption, is free of that horrible darkness, the rape of young children that is at the heart of Washington, D.C. We will never be free of it until those two, Tony and his brother, John, I think it's John Podesta, go to jail. The Podesta brothers need to be in jail. Now here's an interesting one. China to ban citizens with bad social credit, or I should say bad social credit rating, from taking flights or using trains for up to a year. This is from The Independent. Mrs. Little saw this last week, and I was wondering when it would appear in English. Well, it didn't take long, and this is the forerunner for the Mark of the Beast. At the moment, in China, you are banned from traveling if your social credit score is too low. But you can bet that you will quickly be banned from buying and selling in the near future, if that is possible. Population control methods are routinely tested in countries like China or India, and when they are successful, they will be used elsewhere. So you can bet that the global elites will be looking carefully at what China is doing and look for opportunities to implement this globally. Saving California. This is a YouTube, and it says, I doubt that California can be saved. But Bill Whittle's description is appropriate for the vast majority of America and Americans. Times have been good and comfortable in America for far too long, and they have made Americans weak and foolish. And Bill Whittle ends with this quote from one of his viewers, and it's really good. Bad times make strong men. Strong men make good times. Good times make weak men. Weak men make bad times. He then said that we were at line number 4 and that we should get ready for line number 1. This next one is approaching. The grand solar minimum could cause global cooling. Well, we are still in solar cycle 24 and are on the downward slope of this cycle. When it bottoms, solar cycle 25 will begin, probably in late 2019. The problem is that this current cycle is the weakest in over a century. We are expecting cycle 25 to be even weaker still, and when cycle 25 ends, what will cycle 26 be like? We expect solar cycle 26 to be the worst in centuries, maybe even 1,000 years. A grand solar minimum. The problem is that this will mean starvation and disease for more than 1 billion people. Empires tend to fall, epidemics stalk the globe during a grand solar minimum. To my mind, it would be the perfect time for the coming of the Antichrist. Although, we don't necessarily need to wait that long. The point is this. I believe that this grand solar minimum is arriving at the perfect time to bring in the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and to bring in the coming of the beast system and the Antichrist. This next one bothers me greatly. It's teen suicide is soaring. I find it ironic that USA Today seeks for all the different answers to this teen suicide problem, except the one that is right in front of our faces. We are evil to each other. I had to deal with this in grade school, and it was horrifying. I thank God for having parents that dragged me away from the abuse that kids were heaping on me and others. And the teachers were not helping. In fact, they were enabling the abuse. That was over 40 years ago, more like 45 years ago. I can only imagine what it's like now. We are an evil society with evil kids and evil parents, and we are not protecting the victims of this evil. If you have kids, it is your job to teach them to protect those who are being abused. And yes, teach your kids to protect those who need help. And if your kid is the one being abused, then you need to do everything that you can to rescue your child from the hell that he or she is living in. Please, if you love your kids, protect them. Now we're back to China. An empowered Xi Jinping says China ready to fight bloody battle. Gibby62 shared this in the comments section, and most would think that there is cause for concern over this here in Taiwan. And there is some concern, but not as much as you would think, at least from what I've seen. Xi, pronounced, again, XI, pronounced Xi, is threatening Hong Kong and Taiwan. Xi is threatening Hong Kong, anyway, sorry. And he sent their aircraft carrier through the Taiwan Strait to emphasize that point. Even though my apartment looks out over the north entrance to the Taiwan Strait, I did not see that aircraft carrier go by. If the earth were flat, I would have seen it. Just saying. Anyway, the point is that rulers like Xi can often make speeches loudly proclaiming eternal enmity against something, while the object of their rhetoric is someone else. The problem occurs when that rhetoric goes too far and the leader finds himself forced to actually go to war. The Arab League made this mistake in 1948 and lost their war with Israel. Too many speeches and too much rhetoric often leads to bad outcomes. Is that what we're looking at here with Xi Jinping? I don't know. It is possible for Xi to invade Taiwan successfully, but it would require the complete destruction of the island as well as the destruction of China's place in the world affairs. China is not prepared to pay that price just yet. By the way, one of the barriers to the invasion of Taiwan is the lack of amphibious landing craft in China's People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN. They don't have enough ships that are capable of making a contested landing of troops on Taiwan, at least not without flattening the island first. Unfortunately for Taiwan, the government here has essentially surrendered to China. They're only really discussing the terms of their surrender. And I will continue to believe this until I start seeing moves by the Taiwanese government to become more efficient, less corrupt, and willing to invest in a cultural identity that is separate from China. Until then, Taiwan will slowly but surely be reeled in by Beijing. And it will be Taiwan's own fault when it happens. This next one is a teacher on leave after asking if school would permit a pro-life walkout. And this is in response to this anti-gun walkout that has been sweeping high schools across the country. And it's so stupid. And she was just merely making a point. But hey, let's be openly disgusting dirtbags on government pay. That's right, the public school system across the country is staffed and run by left-wing dirtbags. Bags of dirt. It just isn't for the farm anymore. Here's something from Bernie Suarez. Came on YouTube, and they titled the YouTube video, "The Storm is Upon Us. Trust the Plan." I don't know what to make of this QAnon stuff. You should not trust anyone who hides behind a pseudonym. And yes, my name really is John Little. However, some very smart people believe that QAnon is the real deal. If he or they are the real deal, expect fireworks. Lots and lots of fireworks. Oh, and blood in the streets, and even for America to be given a deadly wound from which it will rise again. Or not. There does seem to be some legitimacy to this QAnon stuff, and this Bernie Suarez does provide rather interesting evidence that QAnon is the real deal. We'll find out. Here's something from Martin Armstrong, titled "The Unsound Theory of Inflation." And Martin Armstrong raises an important point that we need to pay attention to when thinking about inflation. he makes the point that hyperinflation occurs due to a lack of confidence in the currency itself. If people do not believe in the value of a currency, they will get rid of it as quickly as possible by exchanging it for something of tangible value. In finance, confidence is everything. And I'm actually a witness to this. I arrived in Israel not that long after the massive hyperinflation that Israel went through. And people were taking their paychecks and immediately going out to buy refrigerators and stoves and anything tangible to keep as much value as possible and get rid of their cash as quickly as possible. Moving on, the Democratic Republican voter bases are more different than ever, study finds. This is from the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. I find this one to be interesting, and it gives the reason why only a moron, I'm sorry, it's true, only a moron can be a Democrat. Quote, the Democrats have changed the most, as the mix of voters who support them has grown less white, less religious, more college-educated, younger, and more liberal over the past decade, according to the study by the nonpartisan Pew Research Center, which, by the way, I'm not certain that the Pew Research Center is nonpartisan. But anyway, moving on. Continuing the quote, Republican voters, by contrast, more closely reflect the demographics of an earlier, mostly white Christian America. In one regard, the party's voters have actually stepped slightly back in time. Republicans are less likely today than a decade ago to be college graduates, Pew found. That's a striking fact in a country that has steadily grown more college-educated, close quote. You can tell that the reporter writing this is a Democrat. And it's also proof that a college education is going to make you less intelligent, less moral, and more willing to accept lies as the truth, which is part of my definition of being a moron. I am sickened by what America has become and what it is becoming. We chose. And now we pay. The next one is Russia leak raises questions about staff undermining Trump. Trump needs to fire more people. Here's a quote. The Washington Post and other outlets reported Trump had been warned in briefing materials not to congratulate the Russian leader on his re-election. Aides even included the message, "Do not congratulate," in capital letters, in the president's talking points. But Trump went ahead and did it anyway, drawing criticism from Republicans on Capitol Hill, close quote. Whoever this security team is, it needs to be either fired or reassigned to janitorial duties. Their job is not to tell the president what to do, but to provide their best estimate of what is happening and the repercussions that might result from certain actions. And then someone leaked when they were a little annoyed that the president did not follow their all capital letters recommendation. People need to be fired, and I'm betting that Trump knows who they are. President Trump's $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill. Well, it's not President Trump's spending bill, but anyway, he will probably sign it. And it is sickening. It is corrupt and evil beyond belief, and these foul fiends from hell need to be put in jail and tried for treason. How dare they do this? But they do this because they can, because we gave them the ability, because we are corrupt. Stefan Molyneux goes on to provide his own remedy, which also doesn't work. I wish that it did, but it doesn't. His brand of libertarianism is just another utopian idea that looks nice on paper, but fails when it meets reality. Without Christians and Christian values, a society has no hope of freedom whatsoever. And then Schumer, Chucky Dirtbag Schumer, heaps praise on GOP omnibus bill. Era of austerity coming to an end, from Grabian News or Grabian News. Chuck Dirtbag Schumer believes that this is a good idea. And if so, and if any idea that Chucky Schumer believes is a good idea, then you know it's bad. Schumer is as corrupt as you can get in a city that is known for its corruption. Schumer and the other dirtbags that created this horrendous bill are an abomination. Then, Fed raises rates and signals faster pace in coming years, from the Wall Street Journal. Do you hear that sound? No, not that sound. The other sound. Yes, it's the sound of a financial collapse that is bearing down upon us all. It's also the sound of reality making its presence felt. Our civilization, as it is currently organized, cannot survive with higher interest rates. But it cannot survive with interest rates where they are now. So our civilization will not survive. When interest rates go up, the interest that governments are paying on the massive amount of debt that they're holding will collapse the system. And that also goes for businesses that are also incredibly indebted, and their interest rate costs will collapse, will cause their companies to collapse. And remember that thing about peak oil? You know how our hopes on fracking have been so strong? Oh, fracking, the fracking revolution. Well, the debt load that these fracking companies the debt load that they have, it'll cause their companies to collapse as well, and there goes our oil production. Think of it as the perfect storm. The next one is, this is not a joke. Man, I wish it was. Gloria Allred is at it again. Black female beauty products locked behind glass, because they are stolen so often, are now considered by Gloria to be racist. So, does that mean that men's razors that are also put behind locked glass is also sexist? Oh, but it's not, because it's not possible to be sexist towards guys, men. Can you say morons? Come on, tell me. Can you say morons? Oh, well, I can certainly say morons. Anyway, our last couple of articles is about Israel, my favorite place on the planet. How has Netanyahu transformed Israel? And this is a VisualPolitik YouTube video. And I was ready to see it as a hit piece that so many in the arena of geopolitics would make. But it isn't. The criticisms that he levels at Bibi, well, they aren't all that great, big. He's not my favorite Israeli politician. I'm not even sure he's even a good politician. But he has given results, big ones. So he gains my respect for that. He has also defeated the Rothschild socialists in Israel, so much so that they have all but disappeared. Well done, Bibi Netanyahu. The next one is, the Israeli-Palestinian peace deal is alive thanks to Jared Kushner, which is a bit of a surprise. How ironic. The Palestinians have backed themselves into a corner, and now they are left with, well, nothing. They had a chance to get everything. All that they needed to do was allow Israel to have just that 1 square kilometer of the old city of Jerusalem. That's all they needed to do. And it's not as if their claim to the old city of Jerusalem was worth anything anyway. But the Palestinians have never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So now they're being forced to concede to reality. Unfortunately, it looks like they will keep fighting this until Gog and Magog, which is not very far away. And unfortunately, when Gog and Magog comes, along will come something that I have called Ezekiel's Fire. It's a book. I wrote the book. It's free. You can download it for free from ezekielsfire.com. Please read that book. I actually hope that you can prove me wrong. That would be wonderful. But until someone proves me wrong, my hope is that you pay attention and you prepare to live without electricity. Without electricity, the water will not come out of your water faucet. The trucks will not resupply your grocery store. Your money will be worthless. And the estimates are that something like 90% of most developed countries will die when the electricity goes out, and then stays out. And on that positive note, we'll close this ShockCast for Friday, March 23rd of 2018. My hope is that you have a good weekend and that you listen to your pastor this coming Sunday. If he's not worth listening to, then maybe you should get a new pastor. Anyway, we'll see you next time.